I love for script at 38. I learned my husband wasn't who he said he was. I'm 32 years old. I loved. And I need to tell you something I never thought I'd have to say out loud. My husband, I loved. The man I chose to marry 7 years ago. The father of my 2-year-old son, isn't who he said he was. I loved. And I mean that literally. Let me take you back to the beginning, because I need you to understand something. I loved. This wasn't an arranged marriage where I barely knew him. This was my choice. I fell in love with him. I loved. We dated for 2 years before we got married. I thought I knew him. He was charming, confident. I loved. He told me he was building a business in Dubai. Import-export, he said. He'd travel there for work. I loved. Sometimes for weeks at a time, but he always came back to me. He always made me feel like I was his world. I loved. He'd bring me gifts from his trips. He'd video call me late at night from his hotel room. He made me feel safe. I loved. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate. I said yes immediately. My family loved him. I loved. My friends thought we were the perfect couple. And for the first few years of our marriage, I believed we were. I loved. We built a home together. We talked about our future, about the family we wanted to create. And then, I loved. 5 years into our marriage, we had our son. The moment I held that baby in my arms, I thought my life was complete. I loved. I looked at my husband holding our newborn, and I felt so grateful, so blessed. I trusted him completely. That trust, I love it, destroyed me. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were always quiet days. My son was napping. I loved. My husband had just gotten home from one of his business trips to Dubai. He went straight to the shower. I loved, like he always did after traveling. His phone was on the kitchen counter, and it kept buzzing, over and over again. At first, I ignored it, but it wouldn't stop, message after message, and I thought, maybe it's important. Maybe it's work. I loved. So I glanced at the screen. The messages were from someone saved as Sarah. When are you coming home? The kids are asking about you. Why aren't you answering me? I stared at those words. The kids. Not or son. The kids. I loved, plural. My hands started shaking. I unlocked his phone. I knew his passcode. He'd never hidden it from me. Why would he? I was his wife. He had nothing to hide. Except he did. I opened the messages, and what I saw, I loved. I can't even describe the feeling. It was like the floor disappeared from under me. Photos. So many photos. Him with a woman. I loved. Him with 2 children. A boy and a girl, maybe 7 and 5 years old. Family photos. Birthday parties. School events. I loved. A whole life I knew nothing about. The woman in the photos was calling him by a different name. Not the name I knew. I loved. Not the name on our marriage certificate. I scrolled further back. Messages going back years. Years before he even met me. I loved. And then I saw it. A message from 3 months before our wedding. I can't believe you're doing this to us. I loved. You have a family. You have responsibilities here. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't breathe. I loved. He was already married. Before me. And he never told me. I was shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I loved. I heard the shower turn off. He'd be out any second. And I just stood there, frozen. I loved. Staring at the evidence of a life I never knew existed. When he walked into the kitchen, I was still holding his phone. He saw me. Saw the phone in my hand. And for just a split second, I saw panic flash across his face. I loved. What are you doing? He asked, his voice tight. I couldn't speak. I just turned the phone toward him. I loved, showing him the messages. I don't know what you're talking about, he said immediately. Not even a pause. Just instant denial. Don't, I whispered. Don't lie to me anymore. But he did. He kept lying. I loved. He said I was invading his privacy. He said those messages were old, from before we met, that it was complicated. I loved, that I didn't understand. I showed him the recent messages, the ones from last week, from yesterday. Who is Sarah? I asked. My voice was breaking. Who are those children? He looked me in the eyes and said, I loved. I don't know what you're talking about. Even with the evidence right there in front of him, he lied. I loved. That's when something inside me broke. Because it wasn't just about the other woman anymore. I loved. It was about the fact that he could look at me, the mother of his child, the woman who'd given him 7 years of her life. I loved, and lie without hesitation. I spent that entire night going through everything. Bank statements, documents, emails. I loved. I was desperate to understand how deep the deception went. And that's when I found the rest. There was no business in Dubai. No import-export company. No office. Nothing. The money I thought he was making from his business, I loved. It was money he'd been taking from me. From my accounts. Money I'd saved before we got married. I loved. Money my parents had given us as wedding gifts. Money I'd been setting aside for our son's future. I loved. He'd been stealing from me to support his other family. All those trips to Dubai. He was going to them. To his first wife. I loved. His real family. The one he'd had long before he ever met me. I sat on our bedroom floor at 3 a.m. Loved, surrounded by papers, and I realized something horrifying. I never knew him. Not really. The man I married. The man I loved. The man I had a child with. He didn't exist. He was a character. A role he played when he was with me. I loved. I couldn't eat for days. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those photos. That other family. I loved. Those children who looked so happy with their father, my husband. The worst part. Looking at my son. I loved. He was only 2 years old. Too young to understand what was happening. I loved. Too innocent to know that his father had built our entire life on lies. I'd put him to bed at night, and just watch him sleep. I loved. And my heart would shatter all over again. Because how do you explain to your child that his father is a stranger? I loved. That everything we thought we were was fake. My family came as soon as I told them. I loved. I'll never forget that conversation with my mother. I could barely get the words out. I felt so ashamed. So stupid. I loved. But she held me and said, "This isn't your fault. You loved him. That's not something to be ashamed of." I loved. My friends rallied around me too. They were angry for me. They wanted me to confront him again. I loved. To make him confess everything. But what would that change? He'd already shown me who he was. A liar. A thief. I loved. A man who could compartmentalize his life so completely that he never slipped up. Not once in 7 years. I loved. People ask me how I didn't know. How I didn't see the signs. And I've asked myself that same question 1,000 times. I loved. Maybe there were signs. Maybe I ignored them because I didn't want to believe my husband could be capable of this. Maybe love made me blind. Or maybe he was just that good at lying. He had answers for everything. Every late night. I loved. Every missed call, every unexplained expense. He had a story. And I believed him because I loved him. Because I'd chosen him. I loved. Because I'd built a life with him. The betrayal isn't just about the other woman. It's not even just about the lies I loved. It's about the theft of my reality. For 7 years, I lived in a version of the world that didn't exist. I loved. I made decisions based on false information. I built dreams on a foundation of lies. I loved. I brought a child into a marriage that was never real. Every memory I have with him is tainted now. I loved. I can't look back on our wedding day without wondering if he was thinking about her. I loved. I can't remember our son's birth without questioning if he went back to his other family right after. I loved. I can't think about any moment of our life together without this crushing weight of knowing it was all fake. 2. I loved. I'm still processing it. I don't think that ever really stops. There are days when I'm angry. So angry I can't see straight. I loved. Days when I want to scream at him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain he caused me. I loved. And there are days when I just feel empty. Like he took something from me I'll never get back. My ability to trust. My belief in love. My sense of safety in the world. But then I look at my son, and I know I have to keep going. I loved. I have to be strong for him. Even when I don't feel strong at all. My family has been my anchor through this. I loved. They've supported me in ways I never could have asked for. They've reminded me that I'm not alone. I loved. Even when I feel completely isolated in this pain. I'm learning to live with what happened. Not to forgive it. I loved. Not to understand it. But to accept that this is my reality now. At 32 years old, I loved. I learned that the man I married wasn't who he said he was. I loved. I learned that someone can look you in the eyes every single day and lie without flinching. I loved. I learned that love doesn't protect you from betrayal. Sometimes it just makes you more vulnerable to it. I loved. And I learned that the person you think you know best in the world might be a complete stranger. I loved. If you're watching this and something feels off in your relationship, trust that feeling. Don't ignore it like I did. I loved. Don't make excuses for things that don't add up. Because the worst part isn't the discovery. It's realizing how long you were living in a lie. I'm still here. Still breathing. Still taking care of my son. I loved. Still trying to figure out who I am now that everything I thought I knew has been shattered. This is my truth. This is my pain. And I'm learning to carry it, one day at a time.